pass inside to Stevenson. Up against Kaminsky. Bucky good in the ball.
Santel all the way to the basket. Foul. Lays it in for two.
Happy Wednesday, Wayne Finger Lakes basketball fans. Welcome to the Upstate Hoops Podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Coming to you guys live from the third floor of the North Park building, the FingerLakes1.com studios here in Seneca Falls, New York. I am Paul Russo. Next to me, as always, Jim Sinicropi. Across is Kyle Evans and Nate Sharman over at the desk. Happy March Madness deep time here. Through regional finals, I have a couple of teams here moving on. A few teams really moving on to the Final Four.
Two Wayne Finger Lakes teams and two area teams, two former Wayne Finger Lakes teams, two former Finger Lakes East teams.
So, I'll toss over to you, Jim. Got some exciting stuff planned for the weekend here.
Yeah, first we want to announce that we'll be live at both Glens Falls and Hudson Valley Community College covering the Waterloo girls in their semifinals, and if they're successful, the state championship game. That would be Friday morning, Saturday night. And then also Newark in Glens Falls, 10:45 a.m. Saturday morning, and if successful, the championship game will be Sunday. So we'll be broadcasting live on Finger Lakes 1 radio for Waterloo. It'll be Nate and Paul at Hudson Valley Community College live. What's the game time on Friday?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Friday, and then it would be 5 p.m. Saturday.
Yeah.
So if they're finals, 5 p.m.
5:15.
Yeah. Of course, we'll go on early for an extended pregame for this stuff because these are big games. And then I will be at Glens Falls Civic Center. Actually, it's called the Cool Insuring Arena now. For Newark West Hill at 10:45 a.m. Saturday. And I'll be calling that game with Tim Castleman, the voice of WAC basketball, WACK, will be on color. So Tim Castleman and myself will be bringing you the Newark semifinal and then hopefully final on Sunday at 1 o'clock live from Glens Falls. And these broadcasts are made possible thanks to the support from two great local businesses who didn't blink an eye when we asked for their support to help us cover licensing fees, hotels, and some incidentals. But the licensing fees in particular are pretty hefty for these state tournaments. So want to give a shout out to DeSanto Propane, who are sponsoring our coverage of the Waterloo girls. Much appreciated. DeSanto has supported a lot of the things we've done and has been season-long supporters, but they were willing without thinking twice about kicking in for this state Final Four for the Waterloo girls. And then for the Newark Boys, I talked to Anthony Natale at Marshall Exteriors in Newark, and again, without even thinking twice, they said, sure, whatever you need. So Marshall Exteriors and Finger Lakes Construction will be sponsoring our coverage of the Newark Boys and our live broadcast from Glens Falls. So a couple of great local businesses who not only do they do great work, but they also support the community, and in this case, these two great teams, chance for folks to be able to listen in live to what's going on at the state Final Four this weekend. So we have, if all goes well, 4 live games in 3 days.
Nothing better.
Yeah, it's, from across the state. So you can make your plans now to wake up on Friday and Saturday morning and listen to those semifinal games.
And then hopefully the finals Saturday night and Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, yeah.
Hopefully. But we'll dive all into that in due time. We need to revert back, though, to this past weekend and how we kind of got to where we were with the Far West Regionals. We'll start with the boys. Far West C first. Randolph coming out victorious over Lions 57-47. Jim, you were there for that one. Out at Gates Chili. Lions down pretty much the whole game, double-digit at half and after 3 quarters. But, Jacob Sides, 3 threes made, 16 points, JC at 9, but it seemed like Randolph kind of came out with a game plan and really stuck to it.
Yeah, Randolph was an impressive basketball team, and you never really know. You can scout, but until you see this team in person, they weren't physically dominant, but man, did they move the ball well on offense, and they had a great defensive scheme. They did a box and one, with the one being on J.C. Walker, held Walker to just 9 points, and Newark couldn't solve it. As Randolph won fairly comfortably. Jacob Sides was really stepped up and had a good game, was willing to take some big shots when Lions needed them, but in the end it wasn't enough. And, great season for Lions. The thing is that I'm sure they're disappointed to fall in the Far West Regional. I know they wanted to get to states, and it's a tough way for the seniors like Jacob Sides and J.C. Walker too. And Jaden Lopez, I believe, is a senior as well.
Yep.
But great season, another sectional title for Lions, and the future's bright as we saw Jameer Johnson and Stephen Lebrecht and some more youngsters coming up that they're going to be right back in this position again soon, probably next year.
I mean, Michael Briggs comes back for his senior year next year, and
Yep.
he's the one that really, to me, kind of controls that point really well for what he does. And I know we spoke with him, at the end of their playdown game against Pembroke, and he was really excited to kind of live in that moment, be the one who elevated them to get to that point, and just tough. Yeah, I mean, it was a really great season for Lions, like you mentioned, and always tough when it ends in that fashion anyway.
Yeah, well, most seasons end with a loss.
Well, yeah,
as well as great as Newark and Canandaigua girls and Victor boys and Waterloo girls have done, it's still difficult to end your season with a win. They'll need to win 2 games now against state-level competition. So, Kyle, what's your final thoughts on the Lions season?
I thought, honestly, that game was kind of stunning. I think that might be the right word to use, specifically because of the scoring struggles. Just not something that I expected to see. J.C. Walker, 1 point at halftime, was really shocking to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was a very tough loss. It was still a great season, though. Nothing to be really hang your heads, on. It was. I think Lions will be right back. I mean, when's the last time they've really had a quote bad team? I mean, they're pretty good every year.
Yeah,
so,
it goes back. You got to go way back to like maybe Justice Smith's freshman year, maybe, or even the year before.
Yeah, they're always playing really well. Always have really good, solid teams. So, I think they'll be right back, as you guys said.
And again, they added another sectional title where East High did not this year. So I don't know what the gap is there. I think
it's 6 or 5.
Yeah, it might only be 5 now. So one of the winningest programs in Section 5 being right up there in Lions, New York. So again, nothing to be ashamed of this season. They had a great year.
Now let's transition over to the B Far West Regional. Jim, you were there for that one as well still, and that one ended up being probably more chaotic than you maybe anticipated, especially at the end. Newark coming back in the fourth quarter, and then really there that final.
Well, Newark having a lead, right? Again, what's been consistent with this Newark team, first of all, I think that the win that Newark had over Batavia in the Blue Cross was their most impressive win of the postseason. That Batavia team was a really good team. But then they went to Wellsville to face Wellsville and Penn Yan, and they built a 26-point lead, almost gave it all the way back, but held on. From there, they went to the Far West Regional where they faced a Fredonia team that when I was scouting and preparing for the broadcast and then even watching them warm up, I'm like, we got these guys. Newark's got this team. I didn't think that this Fredonia team was much better than – I didn't think they were as good as Batavia and not even that much better than Wellsville. But, they did have a lot of heart. They certainly didn't – and they had some seniors that just never gave up. And, again, Newark had a lead, a 12-point lead. Gave it all back, and then there was one of the most controversial calls you'll ever see, in which there was an inadvertent whistle at the end of the game, which gave Newark one more chance when, by all rights, the game should have been over. If that referee did not blow that whistle, Newark's not going to the New York State Final Four. Fredonia is. But the ref did blow the whistle, and by the rule, Newark had one more shot, and that allowed Braden Steve to make the shot of his life. With time expiring from about 35 feet, with 2 guys on him. He had the composure to not rush it, to square up, lean between the defenders who were overplaying him a little bit, and just knock down the shot that Jim at Gates Chi-Li just exploded. And it's probably one of the more memorable moments you'll see in a high school basketball game was Braden Steve knocking down that three-pointer. to send it to overtime, which is another thing. A couple things. Yeah, Fredonia absolutely got screwed. The game was over by every rights. They had won, but they had 2 fouls to give, and they let Braden Steve receive this ball. Didn't foul him. I mean, the clock could have expired just on the fouls. And let's say that it didn't. Worst case scenario, Newark would have been inbounding with like a second left, maybe less than a second, and they could have fouled them then, sending them to the line when they were up 3. And then, of course, Newark won in overtime, and it started out with a couple of Fredonia free throws to take the lead in overtime, and after that it was all Newark as Kellen Foster came alive, hitting 2 threes in that in that overtime period. And yeah, so I feel bad. I do feel bad for the kids for Fredonia and that whole fan base, but I also don't want to say that Newark didn't earn their way in.
Yeah, they still had to execute,
Yeah.
And in overtime, I believe Fredonia only had 2 points.
Yeah, just those 2 initial free throws.
Yeah, so you're asking to lose. I mean, 2 points in the overtime period. So, but yeah, they definitely could have fouled. They definitely could have done stuff differently. Maybe that comes down to the coaching a little bit. But yeah, Newark earned it. I mean, they still had to execute. That still was a very tough shot to make at the end. So
the question now is, I guess we'll pregame the Final Fours later, but I'm just going to say, I just always felt that Newark has kind of controlled their own destiny. I think they've been the better team in a lot of games they've played in the second half of the season and throughout the postseason as well, and they've showed that by winning. I don't know if they'll be the best team in this semifinal at New York State because they're going to face a tough West Hill team, but certainly a game that Newark can win.
We'll circle back to that, obviously, here momentarily. Meanwhile, me and Nate were over at Buff State Waterloo in their Far West Regional Class B girls, 63-62 victory over Depew. Waterloo trailed at half, but again, that third quarter run they tend to always just go on, occurred, and they pulled away when it mattered most. So really awesome stuff. Nate, I know that was your first time at least at the gym at Buff State. What did you make of it?
Yeah, really impressive by Waterloo, right? Now it's 2 games in a row, right, where they go down in the first half and into the game and just go on this crazy third quarter run. So it's something really awesome to see because, they've obviously smashed teams all season, and then now they're being able to show that they have adversity. They're able to go down in the half and be at a deficit and able to come out and play their best basketball, especially in the third quarter when it counts a lot. So it's really cool to see that Coach Mike Bree's got his team kind of ready to go and can really make the halftime adjustments and beat teams pretty badly in the third quarter.
Yeah, it's so repetitive. I mean, this team, they could be down 10 like they've already been at halftime, and it doesn't matter. They just come right out, play comfortably, and get right back in the game, and pretty much roll from there, and that's how it was again.
Well, it's one of the things I even noticed in the first half, and even said at halftime. It's not like they were not getting good looks or anything like that.
Yeah.
They were playing, I thought, especially on offense. They were cutting through. They were doing pretty much everything that you can do to get good looks. And they just weren't falling. I mean, eventually something's got to give in that sense anyway. Yep. So
and they did a really nice job on Kaylee Kristoff. That girl is a really, really good player. Obviously the leading scorer in history at Depew. She's going to Binghamton, so she has the ball in her hands every single offensive possession. And Waterloo did a really nice job. Natalie DeSanto defended her every single possession. Whenever she get over half-court line, Natalie would be on her, and then it would be a combination of like Addison Bree, Macy Muller, or Morgan Caraballo that would help on the double, and they did a really good job.
Well, I tuned into your broadcast, obviously, and was listening in the second quarter when Waterloo was trailing, and I was like, well, this game's over. Waterloo's got it. It's like if you're going to have to get up by more than 10 points to, in this halftime if you expect to withstand that third quarter push. Now, the question is, how's that going to work in state-level competition, the state Final Four? Are you going to be able to dig yourself out of a first-half deficit?
They just shoot threes so well, so it's like any deficit is not insurmountable because they can just hit a couple threes.
Well, they rely on the threes, and they shoot them at such volume that even if they're not hitting, you got to figure at some point they're going to have a stretch where
such good looks.
Where they hit, where they maybe hit 5 of 10 in a 3-minute span, and then all of a sudden the table turns.
Good defense leads to good offense. That's why I always kind of go back to. I know it's cliched, but
yeah, it's cliched because it's for a reason,
right? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of you mentioned. There are two moments in the second half, especially that I remember, where I think one time it was Natalie DeSanto, and the other time was Macy Muller, who literally did Kristoff, because she had to spin out of the double team, where he left the ball on a platter for a clean steal and coast-to-coast clean layup.
It was really interesting at the end, DePuy electing to foul. Close
to
2 minutes left. They fouled every single time they would get the possession.
Didn't even really go for the steal. It killed them in the end. It really did. It took them right out of it, in my mind. But, hey.
And then, I guess they fouled Lauren Caraballo a bunch of times, and she didn't miss a free throw. So I guess that's not their plan either, right?
No. So let's take a couple notes here of a couple other teams like Jim mentioned before. Victor, the boys, their first sectional title since 1978. They're heading to the Final Four. They were able to defeat Niagara Falls Saturday night. That game was over at Rush Henrietta. So they were I guess technically at the time, fourth team to advance to the Final Four.
But you talk about a double-class AA.
Yeah.
Generally a whole nother level from, the Class Bs and Cs of the world. And because there's no ceiling. So there's some huge schools out there, and there's some big city schools, and, there's great charter and private schools. It's a whole nother level, and congratulations to the Victor program for getting there. Victor's been well known for their lacrosse programs and other sports. Basketball maybe not so much, but they've really built it up over the past 4 or 5 years, and now are a state Final Four caliber program. And so good luck to Victor in the Class AA Final Four.
And then the Canandaigua girls also heading to Hudson Valley Community College this weekend, but something that Jim, you actually asked us about today. I hadn't seen it until you brought it up.
More controversy.
And their now controversial win over Hamburg in overtime.
First of all, though, same thing to Canandaigua girls. Congratulations. It's a program that's really built itself up. I got a good friend, Dave Geithner, who was originally from Seneca Falls. His father was the football coach at Miners Academy. And you might remember his son, who played for Bloomfield, had a huge scoring night, set a single game high. I can never remember what that number was, 52 maybe. But his daughter goes to Canandaigua and is a key part of this team, and so now he's getting the thrill of going to the state Final Four in Hudson Valley. But the controversy, why don't you go ahead and explain what happened?
All right, so what point was
Third
it
quarter.
in the game? Third quarter?
Yep.
So Hamburg was at the line for two, made one of the free throws, and they didn't put it up on the scoreboard, I guess. And there's
Nobody noticed.
video evidence and stuff like that. But
I heard that it was an and one. The basket was good, and then they made the free throw, and the free throw wasn't put on the board.
Gotcha. So,
which is amazing, because you got home and away scorekeepers at the score table. They're supposed to always constantly check each other's work.
And an official book, too, as well.
Yeah.
There's another one there for that.
It's honestly bizarre. It doesn't make any sense how that happens.
My main thing with it is, and I guess this is elements of me coming out from the competitive standpoint, both as a player, and two, as a coach. And
first, just want to make clear that this game went into overtime when, in effect, Hamburg would have won by 1, but this happened in the third quarter, so both teams were going under the impression the entire fourth quarter that the score was the score. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, Hamburg would have won the game by 1.
Well, no,
I don't know.
What I'm saying, though, is as a coach in the moment, which I guess after reading the one article I read today, there was some sort of discussion during a timeout afterwards.
Yeah, right afterwards, so it was immediately.
And this is where, whatever, but, if you feel like you've been injusticed at that point, that's where you have to, go ahead, and if you have to take the technical, you take the technical.
You're going to die on that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's my thing with it. You don't come afterwards on a Monday or Tuesday or whatever the hell it is.
And it's also surprising that I've been at games too where it might even be a rec league game where the scorekeeper doesn't put up a basket or something, and everybody and the parents in the crowd start yelling.
Yeah.
Fans usually lose their mind. When
that happens. So I don't know how that went unnoticed, or how. It really is amazing, because if you're keeping the score, not only are you just writing down the individual stats, but you keep a running tally of the score in the scorebook by Xing off boxes as you go. Yeah. And so when they compared books, they must have all had it wrong.
My main thing is, if you have if it's the way it is, they're going to probably ride with whatever the majority have at that point. And experience. That's kind of the way it ends up going if there's some sort of discrepancy.
You could even go as far as to count up all the
Right.
individual points that you've tallied in the individual
running-
sections of the
the
scorebook,
running
and
book,
then
yeah.
compare that to the running total.
Yeah.
So it's hard to believe, especially at this level, a Far West Regional game. But nonetheless, it happened. But again, I don't say that Canandaigua didn't win that game rightfully, because this was something that happened earlier in the game, and there was so much time to play.
Yeah, and it wasn't their fault.
And it wasn't their fault. And I do think that was even a little less egregious than what happened to Fredonia in the Newark game.
Right. Either way, like we talked about it earlier, we mentioned it before, we got to capitalize anyway and go out and execute, and
Right.
Canandaigua did anyway. You know, maybe ball does lie or something, or doesn't lie. I don't know.
Well, there's lots of opportunities in either of these situations for teams to have made a difference. It's like the tuck rule with Tom Brady against the Raiders. That was a call that could have gone either way, but there's all sorts of different things that happened that game that maybe could have also determined the outcome. So in sports, you have to expect some degree of official error, or in the Canandaigua game, the official score table error. But
Can I also say, too, not to interrupt, because you bring up a good point there. I saw, like, in the article, somebody was, like, trying to blame the refs. Like, the refs have nothing to do with that. Don't blame the refs. They're bad enough we have a ref shortage as is. We don't need more of them.
No, not in the Canandaigua instance.
Yeah.
And the other thing in that Fredonia game, there's 3 refs there, because Section 5 was hosting. 2 of them were Section 5 refs, 1 was Section 6, and it was the Section 6 ref who had the inadvertent whistle.
How about that, then?
Yeah. So
yeah.
it was it was an error, and you're gonna get that. And once the error was made, they proceeded the only way that they could by the rules. But I will say that if they came out of their huddle and somehow awarded Fredonia the ball out of bounds, I don't think anybody would have complained at all, because when Davon Wright saved the ball, as the inadvertent whistle was blowing, he threw it right into the hands of a Fredonia player, who then threw it down the other end of the court, thinking time was going to expire and the game was going to be over. So when I saw the referees huddle with the coaches, and I could tell by the Fredonia coach's reaction that he couldn't believe it. And then you saw them award Newark the ball out of bounds. It was like, holy, what's going on? But like I said, if they had come to the conclusion that it was Fredonia's ball, I don't think there would have been any controversy about it at all. But they did do the right thing. The mistake was made with the inadvertent whistle. But when the inadvertent whistle was blown, Newark actually had possession of the ball. And so Newark kept possession. Braden Steve made the shot.
Well, I suppose at this point it's what we call history in the books.
It is.
So.
It is something that'll be talked about for a long time. I mean, you can go back to Minders losing to North Star Christian in the finals a couple years ago on a phantom foul call, when Minders was basically celebrating the sectional championship, and they pulled it back and North Star won on a horrible, horrible, horrible call.
All right. Well, let's shift our focus from the past to the future. This weekend, Capital District of Albany, New York, and a little bit north, I guess. Glens falls into technically Capital District.
It's about a half hour north of where you guys will be. I got a little longer drive.
What's
better scenery, though?
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I've never been that way.
You never been up to Lake George?
No.
Oh, it's beautiful up there, Paul.
The only
I don't
time
know
I've
about
ever been,
March, but
the only time I've ever
Yeah.
been to the Adirondacks has been when my dad was still playing softball and going up to Saranac Lake. So
yeah, so that's the region.
Maybe
Yes.
some of the lakes will still be frozen, Jimmy. Bring your skates.
Sure, yeah, I'll do some ice skating in between games.
noted ice skater from Sinicropi.
That's what I would do.
Let's start with the girls here. Canandaigua, just mentioned them off the bat here. They play Manhasset Friday at 1:30. And then should they win, they play Saturday night at 7 against the winner of Walter Panis in Averill Park. So that's interesting. There's an interesting tie, by the way, between the A and the B's. Averill Park, their head coach and the top assistant for Albany Academy of Girls, which is who Waterloo could play if they win in the championship, are brother-sister. So there's a really small, interesting tie right there to mention off the bat. So let's shift the focus to Waterloo. They play Cortland at 10 a.m. in the first semifinal game at Hudson Valley Community College on Friday morning. Excuse me. Cortland, interesting, because I kind of figured maybe in the back of my head, Cortland, you kind of think anyway, it's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say successful or anything like that, but only their second sectional championship I was able to find was this year.
Yeah, it's not the
actually.
college.
Right.
But, I think it helps a team to play it's like a real place that there's a lot of AU games in Cortland.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not some mystical place from, the New York City or, they had it's like, it's Cortland.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I just feel like that gives me a little more level of comfort than playing a team that you've never heard of before.
Yeah, excuse me. Cortland, 8-game winning streak at the moment. This is actually their first year down in Class B in a while. They've been predominantly Class A the past few years. In fact, if you look back last year, they were Class A. For them, Valrosa Gambita is kind of their leading player. She won the Class B tournament MVP, averages 14.2 points a game, just over 5.5 rebounds and 2 steals per game.
You guys will have fun with that name.
Yeah. Also, Kendall Mack, a name to keep an eye on. She averages a little over 11.5 points. She was an all-tournament team member for Section 3. Mallory Turner as well. She's averaging over 11.5 there. So this Cortland team's pretty interesting to me. They've won by pretty big margins, but then you look at their past few games really during tournament time, win by 6, win by 8, win by 5. So a little bit of a roller coaster recently for the Purple Tigers.
Taking down Newark Valley, that's got to be somewhat of an upset. I don't know if definitely it is, but I know Newark Valley is always a team that's around, so that's a good win.
Well, this is the first time Newark Valley has been Class B as well, though, in a number of years. They were Class C runner-ups last year in the state.
But they still know how to get there.
Right, correct.
But you're talking Cortland Section 2, not Section 3, right?
No, they're 3.
Oh, they are Section 3, okay.
Yeah. Albany Academy for girls would be the Section 2 representative.
Gotcha.
For that. Yeah. First Final Four appearance as well for the Purple Tigers. So a lot of different stuff coming up there. Obviously, we know about Waterloo and the fact how they kind of roll. I really expect them, in all honesty, to kind of take care of Cortland. To be honest, I think
your favorite
fair assessment to say Cortland is probably the weakest of the 4 teams out of Class B, in my mind.
Yeah, I don't feel like Cortland is better than Depew. Right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like Albany Academy for the girls is another level team but let's not look ahead.
Right.
Hopefully Waterloo can get the win against Cortland, and then you got 36 minutes again. Don't care who you throw out there.
Right.
You can beat them.
Mm.
But definitely just in the preliminarily looking through the teams in this Final Four, I think Putnam Valley's very good too, but I think Albany Academy is like one of those teams that scares you, that when they walk on the court they look more like a college team. That's happened to me a lot at these girls Final Fours. You just
what's interesting though about Putnam Valley is if the longtime fans remember, Putnam Valley is who Waterloo beat in the semifinal last year to advance to the championship game. And they do have a lot of people back. Ava DeChant is the main catalyst in that front. Section 1 tournament MVP. She's got 2,000 career points now, going to Rhode Island to play basketball. They know what they're doing, but I'm kind of with you. You kind of look at this Albany Academy for girls team. They kind of carry themselves, like you said, a little bit different, kind of going down the Twitter rabbit hole a little bit, and it's kind of noticeable to say the least.
But Waterloo was there last year.
Right.
It's familiar territory for Cortland and Albany. Never been there.
Correct. Actually, this is Albany's first sectional title period that they've ever won. It's the furthest they've ever been. This has actually been their quote-unquote season, like historic first season for them, really. Right.
But as a private school, it's tough to judge because they can bring people in and out,
Like that. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you there. But yeah, it's interesting too. A little bit of a nugget here is all 4 of these schools looking for their first ever state title in girls basketball. This is a Final Four that somebody's will come away with a bit of a historic thing for their community in the end.
It's not easy.
No,
it's not. It's hard enough to get to the Final Four, but that's one thing. It's almost easier to get to a Final Four than it is to win a state title, because there's a lot of teams like Newark's been to the state Final Four 4 times. Waterloo's been there to the state Final Four how many times?
3, I think.
Yeah, it's their
Their
third
I
time.
think.
Yeah.
They went there with
Last year and then
Johnson
back in
and Deming,
2013.
and
Yep.
then the last 2 years. But none of those programs have won one. Now Lions has been there 5 or 6 times and won a couple in
Right.
80 and 89.
Waterloo's a bad call away last year.
Palmac won one once. But it is really, really hard because it's a big state.
Yeah.
So you're talking, you're talking about one team left standing in each class. It's really hard, and I don't think it's that any high school in Section 5 can go into a season saying our goal is to win the state championship. I just don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's realistic. I think most schools want to win a sectional title, and then you go from there. But I do think it is reasonable to say, look, our goal is to get to the state Final Four. But once you get there, I think it's hard. It's a lot harder, I think, than people think to win those last 2 games.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't know. I've never been to even remotely close to a quarterfinal in my life.
Me either.
Let's look at the boys now. Again, mentioned AA for Victor. They face Brentwood on Friday as well in their first semifinal at 2:45. If they win, championship game at 7 p.m. Saturday night. They face the winner of Liverpool and North Rockland in that game potentially. So, also, I guess, a little bit of semi-local flair with Liverpool in a way. But either way.
Yeah, and this is also an opportunity for these 4 schools to represent Section 5. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that want to say Section 5 is some of the best
Right.
basketball in New York State. Well, this is where you
I believe Verondaquoit's in there as well for boys for A.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So-
So another Section
Yeah.
5 rep.
How about that? Not bad for Section 5.
No, Rondacoit's been a regular,
Yeah.
I think, in recent years, especially when it was down in Binghamton. I think they went. So yeah, it's tough. You're dealing against Long Island city schools. In that Hudson Valley Capital region, there's some good basketball, but I think that those of us here in Section 5 really feel like we have some of the best basketball in the state, and we'll see how many state titles Section
Right.
5 can claim this weekend.
Yep. And then, where you'll be, Jim, with Tim Castleman, Newark. Semifinal Saturday morning at 10:45 a.m. against West Hill. Kind of mentioned already a little bit, Section 3, Jim. West Hill, and they're one of the pretty much historically good teams, to say the least. Boys' side of things in Section 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a great for Newark. The good news for Newark is that West Hill is not going to be physically imposing. Like, Newark's going to be a little bigger in terms of height than West Hill. But West Hill plays a really good team. Kevin King in his 19th season has a great program, and they are on very familiar ground here in the Final Four, having won 5 times New York State champs. 1997, and again, this is not, back in like 1980 or even 92. It was 97, 2010, 2014, 15, and 17. So they've won 3 in the last 9 years, and it'll be tough. But they didn't even win their league, the Onondaga Liberty American Basketball League in Section 3. They came in second to Chittenango. They finished the season with 7-1, but they did get their revenge against Chittenango on their road in the sectional final. They beat that same Chittenango team 61-65. And then you see a lot of Section 3 teams make it because they play against, I don't know what the section number is, but north of us.
7.
It might be Section 7. Is that what
No, they play. No, they have to play 4, I think.
So we go. I've seen it before where.
Or do they flip flop a little? Because I know Section 2 this year played Section 7 and some stuff.
Well, they generally don't produce the type
Yeah.
of champions that Section 3 does. So, and this was no case either. West Hill's toughest games were in Section 3, Chittenango and then Marcellus. But against Owego Free Academy, they won 72-38. So, but now they come in here against Newark, and they're a really, really good basketball team, which you would expect at this level. I'd argue Newark's a really good basketball team too. I think that Newark will have to put together their most consistent start to finish game. I think we've seen it throughout the postseason where they've looked unstoppable at times and then just kind of like gone away for stretches. I don't think they'll be able to have that stretch against this West Hill team, who I think is going to be playing them tough from start to finish. They come in winners of 11 straight. And again, with that state championship pedigree already, but advantage to Newark in size and, also maybe that team of destiny type of feel, it's, when that Brayton Steve shot went in, you can't help but feel like this could be a team of destiny. And the other thing about Newark, and I've talked to a few people, this will be their 5th trip to the state Final Four. But a few just general, like old school guys like my age that went to school in the 80s and even the early 90s, I say, yeah, this is Newark's 5th trip to the state Final Four, but they never won a state championship. And they would be like, Newark never won a state championship? And I'd be like, no, they didn't. And they couldn't believe, because they almost assumed they did, because back in our day, Newark had some really, really good teams. And, of course, they were teams that the 14-time sectional champs, Newark Reds. So, but no state championship. But now they have a chance to do this particular team, a team that we had written off in midwinter, is maybe not having what it takes to even win a sectional championship based by some of their results, is now right there. So, can they do it? Sure they can. Of course, if they were to win against West Hill, they would face the winner of Catholic Central and Southampton. So Catholic Central will be a really strong team, another one of those private school situations. Southampton from a Long Island school I don't know much about. It's really tough to get information on some of those schools that are on for whatever reason. I don't know. They just don't get as much online. Actually, was reading some game write-ups on Newsday. So it's one game at a time. One game at a time.
And that's the key thing. I mean, I always kind of mention it pre-game is, it's all right to kind of keep your eye a little bit forward, but the main focus always has to be, especially this time of year, and obviously it gets amplified, the game at hand, the task at hand for that night. Because, it can be tough. Sometimes your mind does wander to a little bit further down the road when it probably shouldn't be. That's
at this point, I don't think anybody. I think they're just focused on their next game, and they're going to be, for all these teams, they're just going to be battles. You're not facing a team at this level that doesn't deserve to be there.
Right.
So,
for sure. All right. So, before we head off, you remind me.
One last thing about this Newark team. Newark's known for their great coaches. So, Saravolo, Havrilla, and so Henry Couperis took over. I think this is his 4th season, 3rd or 4th season. But there's a lot of question about, okay, is this the right guy? Well, 2 back-to-back sectional titles now, and taking his team to the New York State Final Four. I think that Coach Couperis can certainly rest easy now, knowing that he's proven himself to be the caliber of Newark coach that the fan base and alumni kind of expect to have at Newark. He's brought them to a state Final Four for the 5th time in their school history, and he, whether or not he can bring home a state title. Now, if he was able to, he would have done something that even the great Ron Ceravola never did. And of course, there also is a storyline of Ron Ceravola being on the bench for the final time this season, and it's gone longer than probably he thought, and now he's finding himself back in Glens Falls now as an assistant. So there's just a lot of storylines there, and year to year we look at the players, but programs are really a reflection of their coach in high school basketball, and I think that, and Henry Couperis made some changes too. Newark was predominantly man-to-man like for decades, and he started playing a 2-3 zone, and there was a lot of people who didn't like that. But in the first half of that, in the first half of Newark's Far West Regional game, that zone was played to perfection, and Fredonia couldn't get a shot off. I don't know what happened in the second half. The zone was not quite as active, but just another thing, times change, and Henry Caparis was willing to make a change to something that has been a staple at Newark. And to be honest with you, I might have criticized it too at the time. It was just so foreign to see a Newark team playing a zone, but he's got him at the state Final Four, and he's won back-to-back sectional titles. And so, I think it's definitely got to give Coach Henry Caparis his due here, because taking over that program, like I say, it's just some scrutiny there, and he's definitely proven himself worthy and could probably stay there now as long as he wants.
Definitely, yeah. You kind of say, it's a tough job out there. Newark's always good. I remember playing them all the way through and always competitive, and but I agree with you. It's hard to argue, I think, with the numbers at this point, right?
I think kind of Coach Caparis' first year, they went like, I don't even know what it was, like 4-15 or something like that.
It was rough.
Yeah. So it got off to a really, really rocky start. And now just a couple of years later, he's at the state Final Four. So, that's enough said. Like, there's no argument, that he's a good coach.
Definitely. All right, so remind everybody again here, myself and Nate Sharman will be at Hudson Valley Community College Friday morning for Waterloo Cortland Girls Class B semifinals, courtesy of DeSano Propane. And then Jim, on Saturday morning, he'll be up at Glens Falls with Tim Castleman for Newark Westhill Class B boys semifinals. That's courtesy of Marshall Exteriors. Then, if necessary,
and Finger Lakes Construction.
They're
the same company. Finger Lakes Construction builds pole barns. Marshall Exteriors does a lot of the residential stuff. They did my house.
Oh.
And did a really, really nice job. So I'm talk about that a little bit on the broadcast as well.
And then, if necessary, as we call it, but Class B final for girls will be Saturday at 5:15. I was reading the date. And then boys would be Sunday at 1 p.m. So good luck to all the teams. Certainly hope that we get to call the finals as well on the next day after following that. All right, so for Nate Sharman, columnist Jim Sinicropi, I'm Paul Russo, and everybody else at Finger Lakes One. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Good luck again to all the teams this weekend, and we will talk to everybody during the broadcast Friday and Saturday.